This is a Film Stories original podcast. We made this.
Welcome to the X-Cast. The truth is in here. I'm your host, Sarah Blair, and I'd like to give a warm welcome to our guest, Kristen Cloke-Morgan. Hi.
Hi.
How are you doing, Kristen?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Hearing me?
There we go. So this is definitely not your first time to our podcast. You're basically a regular guest at this point.
Really?
Almost.
Oh my God. I hope everyone's tired of me now.
No, not at all. This is your third or fourth time visiting with us. You got to do the X-Cast live, which was a lot of fun. And
yeah, that was fun. Oh, and it was fun because Glenn was walking through the room and I was like, hey, get over here.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
The power of live broadcasting.
Yeah.
Yes, awesome. So we're here to talk about the season 4 episode, The Field Where I Died, where you played Melissa Ephesian and some of her multiple personalities or past lives. So I'm really curious about how this role came about for you and how that got developed.
Well, there's so much to say about this episode.
Yeah.
I really don't. I don't know that I've ever really. I guess I've talked about it a little bit, but I haven't. I don't know that I've talked that much about Field Where I Died. Maybe I have, and I've just kind of blocked it out. Let's see. It came about because Glenn and I had been on Space Above and Beyond together. That's where we met. And we really just, we became partners. We became, working partners and best friends and life partners and, soulmates. And I think that is really kind of where the episode came from. For Glenn, after that show got canceled, he went back to the X-Files after having, he did seasons 1 and 2 and then left for 3 and came back for 4. And so it kind of started there. I think it started a little bit with that idea. And around that time, the Ken Burns documentary had come out on the Civil War. And I think everybody at that time, who had seen it had been so moved by it. And I think that was a little bit of an inspiration for Glenn, and the idea of somebody, feeling like they know somebody so well that they have known them forever, or their significance in your life couldn't possibly be for just one time. And I don't know that Glenn is really a believer in past lives and all that, but he, I think it was just sort of out of that. And he wanted to, and because we are working partners and we enjoy challenging each other, I think he was excited to be able to write for somebody that he could just really write what he wanted and feel like we had the trust to figure how to get it done that we had talked about or that I had done, and and people that we knew or imitations that I had done, things like that, little germs of that. And I didn't really know what he was writing when he was writing it, and then he handed it to me and I was like, oh my God. And it was beautiful and romantic and a challenge.
Well, that's what I really love about this episode, is that it kind of is like he wrote it for you, and all those little seeds that came out of that is really special and beautiful too. So it's kind of a unique episode in that way. And I mean, I think it's really fascinating that he picked up on those bits of personality or your different impressions and things like that, and he incorporated that into it. So it's like you did have input into the personalities that he created, but you didn't know it at the time. And he presented you that. It's really fascinating. Yeah, because I was going to ask you about that. Like, did you help him decide anything? But I guess if he wrote it and you didn't know about it yet, and then he presented it to you, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I can't. It's been so long. It's hard to remember exactly how that came about. I mean, I know they're based on certain things that I had done, and then once you do it, then you start to develop it, and then that character, of course, is a really incredibly sad person. I mean, deeply, deeply broken. It was funny. I was listening to another podcast, and this podcast also had a podcast about somebody who had multiple personality disorders. And it was you and I were scheduled to do this last week, and it was just around the time that we were scheduled to talk, and I went back and listened to it, and just how, and it completely brought me back to all of the stuff that I was reading and researching about doing that. It's really so devastating, people who have that disorder. It's so sad.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I was wondering about is what kind of research did you put into the role? Because it's really intense and very emotional and, I mean, very realistic. So did you meet people with the disorder, or?
There was one book at the time. It was called When Rabbit Howls. I don't know if you know that. And there was a woman, and the woman who wrote it had been on TV a few times. And, when you're doing episodic television, you don't have that much time to research it. You kind of, the scripts come out and you kind of go. And so I kind of knew that this was the area that we were going to get into. So I read that book, and I watched as much of her interviews as I could. And sort of that was the thing, was her, if I remember correctly at the time, basically the impetus to change personalities was that a personality would take over in order to sort of protect the other personality. So if one personality was feeling overwhelmed and sad, the other personality would come to change it up for them in a protective kind of way. And she was really fascinating to watch. And there were some people who, of course, thought she was, making it up and all of that. But it was really so interesting. I mean, she was so fascinating. And so that's kind of where I started from, was that the personality changes had to come from, basically a deep sadness and a need for that thing to come in and take over to protect the dominant or the present personality from feeling pain.
So that's where the character I mean, do you refer to them as different characters, or how did you?
They were people that she believed lived. They were people that lived inside of her, that took over. And I think the thing is about people with multiple personalities is they are not always conscious when one personality takes over or not.
Wow.
They're not completely. Sometimes they have a memory of what happened when a personality took over or not, and sometimes they don't. And that's what this woman had said in this podcast that I was listening to. It was so moving.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I mean, really interesting to watch your portrayal of that on screen, because I mean, the way you kind of just moved, and especially in the scene where Melissa went under hypnosis, and she was moving from each back and forth to the other, and it happens in just a moment, like a breath, and then it switches, and it's just like
it's so sad. It's just yeah, a lot of that was cut. Not a lot, but several minutes of it were cut out. I mean, it gets even more sad at one point. It was really painful. It was probably the most painful thing that I've ever done in my life, or one of the most. I think probably the most, because it had to happen in such a short period of time. You know, it was like a shock to the system in a weird way.
Oh yeah, and I mean, we were talking about being moms right before you started, and the scene where she's talking about the little boy. I mean, when I first saw it, I was a teenager, so I mean, I felt it and everything, but then now that I've grown older and I'm a mom and I have a little boy about that age, it's really affecting and very intense scene, and that had to be emotional and draining.
Yeah, I really prepared for it all day. David did his first, and then I came in and did mine, and it was like one of those things that I was preparing for that moment the whole time.
Right.
That we were doing it. It was just one of those things. I carried that around. It's just, it's just, I guess it's just what you do, but it was painful. It was hard. It was hard. It was one of those things where it took a bit to come back, just after I finished doing that part. I remember just kind of, it took a little while to shake it.
I mean, watching it takes a little while. I mean, yeah, I can't imagine having to actually do that. It's impressive. Did you have a voice coach at all for any of the accents or anything like that?
No. And it's funny because, that was a little bit of the choice. Some people were like, oh, the accents aren't right. But, I wasn't I think that in order for it to work for me as an actor, I was, consciously playing that it was multiple personality disorders, that I wasn't channeling a past life.
Okay.
So that my accent wasn't, I didn't need to study the exact region of, that was an accent that I had, that I had. It was, at the time when I was working on that accent, it was for a particular region in a particular play. And then I sort of developed it, kept it over time, although, it was just, for me, it was just an accent, and it was the accent that, could be, if you were watching it the first time, it could be Southern to you. And if you didn't live in the South specifically, or a specific area of the South. So really, to me, it wasn't as important to get it right. And looking back, I think it would have been interesting to have done that particular region of the South and had gotten that accent more specific. I think it would have been kind of an interesting. It would have been a better layer at that time, if you were to go back and research it and know that I was doing that specific dialect. But that was the choice that I made at the time. And, I don't know that it was the best choice. Ultimately, I should have probably been more specific, but it was the choice that she was making it up, Well,
I mean, having grown up in East Tennessee myself, you weren't far off. It was pretty close. I'll tell you that much.
But those accents, it's so amazing how specific they are for each region. I mean, even not all parts of Boston or New York are the same.
Oh yeah.
More, even California, there's different accents. So I love accents. I think they're so wonderful. At the time, that was the choice that I made. In looking back, if I were doing it now, maybe I would have been very specific about it. But I think, I wanted it to be, that girl wouldn't know that accent specifically, so it was eerie enough that she could do it, but it was not, Scully could say very easily, but she's not, that's not she was really researching it. That's not the accent, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you had an accent expert come in or whatever it is. You know, so that was the choice that I made at the time. And looking back, I probably should have made the different choice, but that's how I went with it.
And that, I mean, that's another thing that I was wanting to ask you about. You kind of touched on it a little bit about whether you were playing it as the multiple personality disorder or as past lives, but you kind of mentioned it was more that she had the multiple personality disorders. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Well, I think that that's the more relatable choice. You know, and but the point, but I think it's a relatable, it's the choice to play because it's the grounded choice. I mean, they're both kind of wackadoodle choices. I mean, of the two, you know, they're very,
well, it is the X-Files, so.
Right, it's the X-Files, so you go with it. But, you know, the part of it that was important for the character was to draw him in, that she believed it so much that he believed it.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think that's a metaphor for acting itself. Like if you really believe it as an actor, other people will believe it. And it's a metaphor for life. And I think that's what's interesting about the X-Files. You know, what do you believe?
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
that I want to believe is kind of, you know, the overall theme of the show. So in terms of their relationship, it was he wanted to believe that, and he did. And she provided him an opportunity to do it because she believed it when she said it. And that's what's interesting about that character is the commitment to the place that she's in at that time because of her disorder.
It's very moving, and the whole episode is just very intense about what she's going through, and I liked how Scully kept trying to remind Mulder that, you know, this woman is dealing with a lot.
Yeah.
And you know, you don't need to keep throwing this at her and trying to drag this out of her and all that. I felt like Scully was almost kind of her defender or her advocate in a way through the episode, and she's trying to pull Mulder back a little bit. And when you watch it, it's so easy to get pulled in, even as just a viewer, to this story and these characters that she's got inside her head. So I can understand how Mulder would have been sucked into. It's just very intense and emotional journey that, you know, we get to go on with these characters. It's really a beautiful piece of work. So when you were preparing for this, did you give any of the characters maybe any more backstory than what was presented in the episode?
It's hard to remember now, but I think, you know, it was, you know, sort of like I said, that the people were there and they were fully formed people to her, and they had their, you know, they definitely had their backstories, and they've had their full personalities. And the main thing is that they had a specific function in the inner life of Melissa. They were prescribed for the situation.
And I think that comes through definitely on screen. That was really effective. I guess on that note, you know, I was wondering kind of about the ending of the episode. Is it Sydney that's drinking the drink to protect the others? And is that how Melissa kind of woke up and she didn't die? Or do you even remember?
I'm like, I should have watched this again.
Yeah.
Wow, I really should have seen this. If I remember correctly, I mean, I just felt like, that she was in incredible pain, and she knew it was her time to go, and you know that it wasn't like she was living an incredible life anyway. I mean, she was beholden to Vernon, and you know, he was this brutal dictator, and slave, slave
Yeah.
driver of her existence. And it wasn't, so when it was time to die, there wasn't, I remember feeling that kind of, this is it. This is the moment. This is the time. There's no sense in fighting it. And, I think that there was that piece where she had found Mulder, and there was something in that for her, almost like a moment of, something kind of real human person, a kind person who, or even Scully to some degree, kind people who had responded to her.
Oh, yeah.
So she had that kind of moment. But yeah, I feel like it was a moment of, just before she drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
But it was where she just stopped fighting.
Yeah. Yeah.
There wasn't anything good for her.
It's such an emotional episode, and dealing with these deep feelings and these deep things that these characters are going through. And I mean, it's very powerful.
Yeah, it was so sad at the time. When I think of it, I just feel sad. And when I watched it, it's hard. It's kind of hard to watch because it's, as you're watching your person, and we don't see ourselves in the world.
Yeah.
So when you're seeing yourself, it's weird. There's just no time when you're watching yourself on film when it's not just weird.
Right.
It's just not.
Yeah.
And or even when you've gotten your hair done and you're talking to the hairdresser or whatever, and you're seeing yourself talking because you're in front of the mirror as they're doing your hair. It's still weird, right?
Yeah.
So as an actor, when you're watching yourself, it's just weird. And then when you're watching yourself, and it's so that the inner life of that thing is so brutal, so sad. It's sometimes hard to reconcile it. And even years later, like seeing it, I still don't see myself. I still think of all those. I still think of her. I still think of her. It's just so sad. But it's weird because I have to see it through myself. But it's weird. But it's sad. She's sad. It's a sad story.
It really is, but it's also beautiful. And I think while it's almost bittersweet, because I feel like the through line is that there is this beauty and there is this hope, even though her life has been so dark. There's this hope of more to come, and that even though she may have this multiple personality disorder, and there's still like that hope that maybe there is the next life for her, that she can find love again, and for Mulder too. I mean, he says that in the episode. This life is not worthless. It's worth living, because even though we're here for just a short amount of time, we still found each other. And it's just a really nice idea, I think. No matter what you believe, it's always nice to believe in love. Any way you can get it, and any way you can find it.
Yeah, she says that. I think in the regression, she says we're only meeting in passing. And that's the point of the episode, is that even though you're, that even if in some lives you are with someone the whole entire time, and other times you just see them in passing. Mm-hmm. It is a nice idea that the people that you surround yourself with in a life will play some role at some point in time in another life. Mm-hmm. That is kind of a nice idea.
You mentioned the documentary, the Ken Burns documentary at the beginning. So you were familiar with the real life letter of Sullivan Ballou.
Yeah.
And
And Glenn really loved that. I think it was really moving to him. And he did all that research. I mean, Glenn is, does exhaustive research, and that is just unbelievable. Yeah, so he loved the Civil War.
And the Robert Browning poem, does that have any particular significance, or is it just fitting for the episode?
I think it was just fitting for the episode, yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And just the way, it opens and he's looking at the photos and all that. Are the people in the photos, do you know who they were, or I was wondering about those photos. Production assistants or...
it's funny in the X-Files art department. I mean, just in having worked with them in this and when I wrote that episode here, I mean, they're just so brilliant. They're just brilliant. The things that they can do, you wouldn't even believe. Glenn's working with a bunch of them now in Vancouver, and it's just what these artists do behind the scenes. You just can't believe the talent of some of these people. They're just never spoken about and never talked about, and the things that they come up with, it's just amazing, and it lives in your mind all these years. And some guy did that in a room, and you don't know his name, and his credits go by so quickly in a little corner of the TV. And these people, they're artists. They're incredible artists, what they do. These crews of people, they're amazing. They're amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm sure it was some, I don't know exactly, but I would imagine that it's some, based on my experience with them the last time, I'm sure it's something they came up with.
Yeah.
And
they look so authentic.
Yeah.
So speaking of art and direction and all that, can you talk a little bit about what it was like to work with Rob Bowman?
Yeah, he's an excellent director. And I think it's always weird for people when the producer of the show says, oh, and by the way, you'll be working with my wife. I think that's very challenging because, as a director, I think, especially for something like this, you might want to pick your cast. And, I've actually several times auditioned for parts with Glenn, and the director did not. Or either one time it was the director, and then another time it was one of the producers just couldn't handle working with the writer's wife. It was just felt like it just freaked, they just freaked them out. And it was devastating because, the parts were very like this, where Glenn and I have worked together, and he wrote the part, and I earned the part. And it was just one of those things where they had political reasons or whatever. It's just, so Rob was brave in that way, because I think he did not know what it was going to be like. And it could have been really bad.
I'm glad it worked out, because it's a beautiful piece of work.
I hope he feels that. I have no idea. Maybe he doesn't. I have no idea. But we really I sort of knew what I was going to do, and did it. And when we talked about things, we talked about them kind of in terms of music. I would listen to a lot of music at the time, and I would play him what I was listening to, and he would be thinking about something, and he would play it for me, and that's kind of what I remember about it. I don't really remember a lot of what happened on the set, honestly. I didn't talk a lot to the actors. I didn't talk a lot to the crew. I was really in such a deep, strange place that I don't have a great memory. Like at some point after, I think filmed one day when I didn't have a lot of regression stuff and maybe chatting, and the episode went on, like we went there at that time, they had like a whole second unit. So every episode just went on into second unit, shot for way more than the average amount of days. And so it was long, and it was brutal. It was just, so I don't, we didn't do a lot of talking. We sort of shared we communicated through music. And of course, there were times where I would get stuck, and he would try to help me through it the best that he could. But it was a difficult situation, I think, probably for him, in that he's just given this actress who shows up and cries and acts like a weirdo. I'm sure that I have no idea what that was like for him, but I'm sure it was, weird, and it's his friend Glenn's wife. You know what I mean? It's just, I'm sure that was just bizarre. I have no idea.
However, whatever magic happened on that set, it came together in a really cohesive way. Especially, you mentioned the music and everything. I really enjoy Mark Snow's score through the episode, and how he kind of matches the different themes to the different characters throughout the episode.
Yeah.
And the lighting and the camera angles and all that just work together to create a work of art. I don't know what else to call it, but
Rob I think that's where he really shines. He's really visual, and I think his episodes are, really visual, really, really strong in that way. And he's really prepared. He knows what he wants to do. So it's not like he's just a really, good, solid, really good director. And so I think that it makes it easy.
Yeah.
Or when you're doing something that's so difficult, that the director knows what he wants to do.
Right. Yeah.
And that's so great.
The X-Files seems like more of a family and that kind of thing. So did that help at all? I feel like it probably made a difference, as opposed to like other shows, like you said, where the director wasn't quite so open to that. But
yeah, I'm sure the fact that Rob, directed a lot of those episodes with David and Gillian gave them a familiarity. But like I said, there's a lot of it I don't remember, because I was really, in a deep, strange place.
Right.
It was,
Yeah.
it's kind of weird. There's parts of it I just don't like, the parts where there was camaraderie and laughing on the set. I just wasn't part of that.
Right.
And even though I like to be in the energy of the set, no matter what it is, because I think it's just helpful to not have to always leave the set. In that particular case, I think I probably didn't stay around that much. It was because it was really uncomfortable for everybody. It was just uncomfortable. I was like an uncomfortable presence, I'm sure, because it was weird.
Well, it's hard to stay in that kind of headspace, I'm sure, and have to put yourself through that. It's probably really difficult.
It's maybe easy for other actors, I'm sure that there are actors who do that with much more ease than I do. That's just the way that I have to do it, but maybe other actors don't. There are other actors that can maybe find that easier or come in and out easier. I'm just not one of those people. I really have to do that thing. It's, I have to just feel the feelings,
Yeah.
so, and I'm sure that was weird for those people.
It's a very emotional episode, but yeah, it's fascinating to hear about that process and everything like that. Do you feel like, now you've got kids, you've been married for a while, you've got kids and all that. Do you feel like this is an episode, a piece of work that it's almost kind of like a love letter in a way in your relationship and everything? Is that something that you can share with your kids ever, or just be like, this is what your dad and I did together and we made this? Like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. We've tried to show things to the kids. They're not overly interested. Older kids are a little bit more. Glenn's kids are a little bit more interested in it now. I think it's really. I think the thing is when Glenn and I work together, he very often writes parts for me where I'm very sad. And I think it's hard for the kids.
Yeah.
I'm always
Right.
like crazy or really sad. I mean, even Final Destination, that character was sad. Millennium, crazy and sad. X-Files, crazy and sad. I cried a lot on Space Above and Beyond. Glenn and I just did something together. I don't know, I guess it was 2 years ago now, on Lore, where I played someone who's crazy and sad. So he writes a lot of that. I think he trusts me to do that and writes it for me a lot. So I think the kids don't love watching it because I think it's weird because that's not really how I am. And I don't think I am. I'm not really crazy and sad all the time in my real life. So I don't know, the kids, Glenn and I think, when we've tried to show it to them, it's like they see it and they watch it, but they're not like clamoring to watch it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective for sure. Now you need to tell them, write a romantic comedy or something happy.
We've done them. They're just not as popular.
Well, is there anything else you would like to add or anything else you wanted to talk about or?
Yeah, the main thing is that I wanted to say was that, I really appreciate your being so kind about the episode. And, like I said, it is a romantic story. I mean, it is a love letter. And when you put yourself out there as, I think some of the best things you're ever going to do are when you expose yourself the most, hopefully. And, but you take a risk in doing that. And no matter how far away it is from you, it still feels personal, and you don't want someone to say something publicly about something you feel so personal about that's hurtful. So I do appreciate your sensitivity and your kindness. Really, that's so nice of you. I really, really genuinely appreciate it. So thank you.
Well, we really admire your work. Kurt and I, when we were talking about the episode, we just really enjoyed your performance and, really are thankful that, you were able to portray this and put it out in the world for us in such a way that, we can enjoy so many years later and find something new to appreciate about it. And I mean, that's what I really enjoy about the X-Files as a show, is that I can keep coming back to the episodes over and over again and still find new things to love about it. And it doesn't seem to get old to me. I mean, maybe I'm just a nerd, but
that's nice. I mean, I think that's the thing, is that that's a romance in and of itself. When you have these things in life that you form attachments to, and they give you comfort and they give you solace, and they give your life meaning. And, there's nobody in the world who can say that's not important, or that's stupid, or that's silly. I mean, that's beautiful that you have things in life that make you happy. And that's what we're all here to do. And it is that we only get this one life, those things are important. And they're the way that and I'm putting myself out there in this incredibly, raw way, scary way. And you make it okay that I did that because it has meaning for you. And so we justify each other's participation in that, and it makes it okay for both of us. So that's so nice.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us and share your thoughts and your memories with us about this episode. We really appreciate you, and we hope that you'll come back and speak with us again sometime soon.
I can't believe that you would want me to come back again. But
of course. But I always love talking with you.
I appreciate you guys too. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Where can we find you online? Are you available on social media at all, or?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, and I'm on Instagram. I'm public on those. You can follow me and find me and tweet to me. I usually tweet back, especially if people are nice.
Yes. Well, we certainly appreciate you, and Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, trust no one.
The Xcast, an X-Files podcast, is produced and hosted by Tony Black, alongside a dedicated team of podcasters and X-Files fans. You can find the show on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook by typing in the Xcast, or inside our group, the X-Files Basement, an Xcast podcast fan group, plus on Instagram by typing in the XFcast. If you're a fan of the show, why not support us on Patreon? Exclusive bonus episodes, early access to new episodes, plus become part of our Xcast community in the Patreon department. To see our monthly subscription options, just head to patreon.com/the Xcast. That's patreon.com/the Xcast. We'd love to see you join our Patreon community. We're also part of the We Made This podcast network at We Made This Pod on Twitter and We Made This on Facebook. You can find a range of shows on TV, film, music and popular culture in general on the network. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.